I never thought I'd be the man with nothing but a box to his name. Success was my identity for so long that losing it felt like losing myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when I was James Mitchell, founder and CEO of Mitchell Structural Solutions, Boston's premier engineering firm. I'd built it from the ground up over 12 years, one blueprint at a time. My crowning achievement came when we secured the Harbor Bridge project, $12 million, and Boston's most prestigious infrastructure contract in decades. The morning I signed those papers, I remember thinking, this is what it feels like when hard work pays off. When I called my wife Vanessa to share the news, she squealed with delight. I knew you'd get it, Jamie. Wait until I tell everyone at the charity gala tonight. I could practically hear her beaming through the phone. That night, she introduced me to everyone as Boston's structural genius. Her arm linked possessively through mine, her diamond bracelet, last year's anniversary gift, catching the light with every gesture. Our daughter Brooke, 16 and beautiful, texted friends under the table about her totally brilliant dad who was gonna basically rebuild Boston. We were that family, the ones who vacationed in Newport each summer, who hosted dinner parties where Vanessa served wine that impressed even her most sophisticated friends, whose Christmas cards showed us smiling on our Beacon Hill townhouse steps. Each night, I'd tuck Brooke in with stories of impossible engineering problems her daddy always solved. She'd listen with wide eyes, even as she grew too old for bedtime stories. You're like a superhero with a calculator instead of a cape, she once told me. I didn't realize how much I'd internalized those words, how deeply I'd come to believe that my value lay in what I could build, what I could provide. And I certainly didn't realize how much my family believed it too. The recession hit Boston like a wrecking ball to a load-bearing wall. Government funding for the Harbor Bridge evaporated overnight. I mortgaged our home to meet payroll, emptied our savings to keep suppliers paid. I'd built something that mattered, with people who depended on me. I couldn't just let it collapse. But collapse it did. 6 months of fighting economic gravity ended with me sitting in my office, signing bankruptcy papers while my employees cleared out their desks. I remember the weight of my Mont Blanc pen that day, how impossibly heavy it felt signing my failure into legal record. When I took a job as an engineer at Walker Automotive 3 weeks later, I told myself it was temporary, just a stepping stone until I could rebuild. The pay was less than a quarter of what I'd made before, but it would keep us afloat. I thought Vanessa would understand. After all, for better or worse, right? The first sign came when I mentioned a promising job lead over dinner. Vanessa sighed, swirling her wine. Another engineering position? Maybe it's time to think bigger, Jamie. This pays well, I defended. We have bills and Brooke's college fund. She cut me off. It's not just about money, it's about status, position, being someone who matters. The words stung, but I chalked it up to adjustment pains. We all were struggling to accept our new reality. Soon, though, the sighs turned to eye rolls. She wrinkled her nose at the engine oil smell that clung to my clothes. Can't you at least shower before coming to the table? It's like dining with a mechanic. Brooke began closing her bedroom door when I arrived home, cranking up music to drown out my attempts at conversation. Meanwhile, Vanessa started attending, quote, business development workshops that kept her out late. She'd returned smelling of unfamiliar perfume, her lipstick slightly smudged. I'm not stupid. The signs were there. But after 15 years of marriage, you develop a remarkable capacity for self-deception. The night I lost my last illusion remains seared into my memory. I was returning from my second job, night shifts at a downtown parking garage, when I heard voices from our living room. Vanessa was entertaining her friend Diane, both of them slightly wine drunk, speaking too loudly. I paused outside, not wanting to intrude. Then I heard my name. Men like Jamie don't understand their only value is what they provide, Vanessa was saying. A man who doesn't make money is just useless decoration. I stood there, frozen, as Diane laughed sympathetically. Then came the voice that shattered me. Brooke, whom I hadn't realized, was also in the room. Dad's become such a downer. Like, get over it already. Alex says people who wallow in their failures never become successful again. Alex. Alexander Reeves. Vanessa's boss at Pinnacle Marketing Group. The name that had begun appearing in our dinner conversations with increasing frequency. I didn't confront them. Instead, I quietly backed away, returned to my car, and drove around Boston for hours, the city lights blurring their unshed tears. Something crystallized in me that night. A cold, clear understanding. What died wasn't my love for them, but my illusions about who we were as a family. For 2 more months, I worked my 2 jobs, watching my wife drift further away, my daughter's contempt grow sharper. I maintained the facade while secretly making arrangements. I knew exactly when and how things would end. Our 15th anniversary arrived on a crisp October evening. Despite everything, I had planned a special dinner. I bought our last bottle of expensive wine, a 2005 Bordeaux we'd been saving for a special occasion. On the table, I placed a small mahogany box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was something I'd prepared years ago, a contingency I'd never expected to need. Vanessa arrived home late, Brooke trailing behind her. They barely acknowledged my efforts, picking at the food I'd spent hours preparing. "We already ate," Vanessa said dismissively. "Alex took us to that new French place downtown." When I presented the gift box, Brooke snorted. What could you possibly afford to give Mom that she'd want? Neither of them made a move to open it. Then the doorbell rang. I knew before opening the door who I would find. Alexander Reeves stood on our porch, an expensive bottle of wine in hand, looking at me with undisguised contempt. He was everything I no longer was: successful, confident, expensively dressed. Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped into our home, the home I still paid for, and handed the wine to Vanessa. "Ready for our evening?" he asked her, as if I weren't there. With shocking casualness, Vanessa turned to me. "You can go now, Jamie. Alex and I need to discuss our future." I stood there, absorbing the moment in its perfect, terrible clarity. Then came the final blow. Brooke appeared on the stairs, phone in hand, recording my humiliation. "Have some dignity, Dad," she said coldly. "This isn't your home anymore." Something inside me should have broken then. Instead, I felt a strange calm. I walked to the table, took only the mahogany box they hadn't bothered to open, and said, "You're right, it's not." I left that night with nothing but the clothes on my back and that small wooden box. As I drove through the darkness toward Chicago, I wasn't consumed with rage or grief. Instead, I found myself planning with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, make sure you subscribe to hear what happens when a silent man finally makes himself heard. My Uncle Max lived in a modest apartment in Chicago's South Loop. A retired military man with little patience for self-pity, he offered me his spare room with minimal questions. "You look like hell," was his only comment as he handed me a beer and pointed to the couch. "Get some sleep. We'll figure it out tomorrow." That night, in the quiet of his apartment, I finally opened the mahogany box that Vanessa and Brooke had dismissed so easily. Inside were 3 things. First, documents showing my 15% ownership in Neurotech, a neurotechnology startup I'd invested in 5 years earlier, now worth $8 million. Second, a black unlimited credit card connected to a private account. Vanessa knew nothing about my what if fund that I'd maintained through small, regular deposits over a decade. And third, the deed to a downtown Chicago condo I'd purchased quietly as an investment property 3 years ago. I had always been cautious, always prepared for contingencies. It was the engineer in me. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very success my wife had left me for had never actually abandoned me. The next morning, I called Rachel Weber, my former finance director and the only person from my company who had reached out after its collapse. "Jamie," she said warmly, "I've been worried about you. How are you holding up?" "I'm starting over," I told her, "and I need someone I can trust." Within a month, We had established Meridian Ventures in a small office space in downtown Chicago. With my neurotech connections and Rachel's financial expertise, we began identifying promising startups for investment. Meanwhile, I executed the second phase of my plan. Without Vanessa's knowledge, I systematically closed our joint credit cards. I transferred ownership of her luxury SUV, still in my name, to myself. I stopped contributing to the mortgage on our Boston home. Vanessa had made it abundantly clear that our life together was over, but she hadn't bothered with the practical details of separation. She assumed I would continue providing while she built her new life with Alexander. She was wrong. I watched from afar as the consequences of my actions unfolded. Through mutual connections and social media, I saw Vanessa's confusion turn to panic. Her credit cards declined at expensive restaurants. The mortgage company sent foreclosure notices. The final blow came when the repo team arrived for her SUV, right as she was hosting a dinner party for Alexander's colleagues. A former neighbor described the scene: Vanessa standing helplessly in the driveway, frantically calling my number, reaching only voicemail again and again. It was the first moment she understood she was experiencing the same powerlessness she had inflicted on me. Alexander's attraction to Vanessa cooled rapidly once her financial situation deteriorated. Within 3 months of my departure, he accepted a transfer to Pinnacle's New York office, leaving Vanessa behind with vague promises to, quote, stay in touch. I wasn't finished with him yet, though. Through industry connections, I anonymously reported Alexander's fraudulent marketing practices, inflated client numbers, and fabricated campaign results to Pinnacle's parent company. The resulting investigation led to his public firing and criminal charges for fraud. His carefully constructed image collapsed even faster than my company had. Meanwhile, Meridian Ventures thrived. Rachel and I had an eye for innovative technology and the financial discipline to make sound investments. We specialized in engineering and infrastructure startups, bringing both capital and expertise to the table. Our first major success came when Carbon Core, a carbon capture technology firm we'd invested in heavily, secured a government contract worth $40 million. A year after leaving Boston, I stood at the helm of a thriving venture capital firm in a gleaming Chicago skyscraper. Midwest Business Quarterly featured me on their cover as Chicago's Phoenix of Finance. My penthouse offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Nothing in it reminded me of my past except the mahogany box on my desk, a symbol not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd gained through its loss. I had achieved success again, but more importantly, I had regained my sense of self. I was no longer defined by what I could provide to others who saw me as merely a resource to exploit. One Tuesday evening, while shopping for groceries for Uncle Max, who had recently undergone hip surgery, I encountered Brooke in the discount section, clutching packages of ramen noodles. She looked thin and pale, wearing worn clothes, a far cry from the privileged teenager who had recorded my humiliation on her phone. She froze when she saw me, her eyes widening in recognition and something else. Shame. Dad, she said, her voice small. She explained haltingly that she and Vanessa were living in her cousin's basement apartment. After losing the house and with Alexander gone, they had spiraled into financial crisis. Vanessa was working as a sales clerk, barely making enough for rent. Brooke had dropped out of her private school and was attending community college part-time while working at a coffee shop. Mom doesn't know I ran into you, she said, eyes downcast. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Though anger still burned within me, I couldn't ignore the pang I felt seeing my daughter reduced to this. I handed her a grocery gift card but walked away from her tears and stammered apologies. Some wounds run too deep for quick forgiveness. Days later, I arranged an anonymous full scholarship for Brooke at Chicago's prestigious Art Institute. She had always been talented, with a handwritten note. If you want to rise, this is your chance, but never expect others to fix what you must repair yourself. 2 weeks later, I looked up from my desk to find Brooke standing nervously in my office doorway. Is it real? She asked, holding the scholarship letter. The scholarship. Did you do this? I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Why? She pressed. After everything I did? Because potential shouldn't be wasted, I said simply, even when it's been misguided. She stood straighter then. I won't waste it, she promised. And Dad, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I didn't offer forgiveness or a hug. Some bridges can't be fully rebuilt. But I did offer her a chance. Not for my sake, but for hers. As for Vanessa, I maintained my distance. She reached out through lawyers, through friends, eventually through tearful voicemails. I never responded. Some chapters are meant to stay closed. That evening, standing on my balcony with Claire Ellis, the investment strategist who had become my partner in both business and life, I realized something profound. I hadn't forgiven Vanessa and Brooke. I had released them. Looking out at the city lights, I understood that revenge had never been the point. It was merely the vehicle that carried me to this new life. The true victory wasn't in what I had destroyed, but in what I had built from the destruction. Penny, for your thoughts? Claire asked, sliding her hand into mine. With her, I had found something I'd never truly had with Vanessa. Partnership based on mutual respect rather than utility. Just thinking about boxes, I replied. How sometimes the most valuable things we carry are invisible to others. She squeezed my hand, understanding without needing the full story. That's the thing about true partners. They see your value even when you're standing in shadows. Has someone ever underestimated you? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about justice served cold. My name is James Mitchell. Once, I was a successful man who lost everything. Now I'm a successful man who found himself. The difference? I no longer measure my worth through others' eyes. You might wonder if I regret any of it. The cold calculation, the systematic dismantling of lives. There are moments, late at night, when I question whether I became the very thing I despised, someone who sees people as disposable. But then I remember the look in Vanessa's eyes when she told me to leave my own home. I remember Brooke recording my humiliation instead of defending me. And I understand that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and others is to show them the natural consequences of their choices. Everyone deserves to be valued for who they are, not what they provide. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize that you are enough, exactly as you are. The mahogany box sits on my desk to this day, not as a reminder of revenge, but as a testament to resilience. Inside now is a note Claire wrote me on our first anniversary, to the architect of his own redemption. It turns out that's what I was building all along, not a company or a fortune, but a life where I could finally stand unashamed, owing no one explanations, seeking no one's approval. That's the true measurement of success. Not what you possess, but who you become in the face of loss. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more journeys through life's darkest moments into hard-won light. Each of us has the capacity to rebuild, to rise, to reclaim our narratives. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to walk away with nothing but a box full of possibilities.